Welcome on the Leaders Who Care. I'm really excited to welcome today a very special guest, someone who's dedicated his time and actually created so many useful, valuable content around leadership and have discovered a number of important uh, toolkits and insights from the also from unlocking the leadership and the hacker toolkit, which I would love to hear about. But please welcome today Lorenzo Flores. Lorenzo, welcome on the Leaders Who Care. We are on a mission to bring some of the most caring leaders of the world and hopefully become obsolete one day because leaders should care anyway. But we just want to give stage to those leaders who go beyond the profits and margins and really help people to thrive, to make a difference, and really be a blessing to humanity. So you have been actually a great blessing with your contribution to not only the teams you have led, but also to the leadership podcast that you have created, Hacking Your Leadership. Really, thank you for taking the time and welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. And, we had a mission when we started our Hacking Your Leadership podcast to do our absolute best to help people become better leaders for the exact same, solution and solve that you have, which is to eliminate the need for us to have the content to make sure that leaders can show up at their absolute best every day and truly care for the people that they are, obligated to care for when it comes to leadership. So, really excited to have our conversation today. And thank you again for having me here.
Well, you have more than 800 episodes, so there's so much to ask you here. But first of all, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Who is Lorenzo beyond your your name, and what really sets your heart on fire to do those things that you do today?
Absolutely. Well, I think first and foremost, I'm a husband and a father. I've been married for just over 10 years and have two beautiful little girls, Alora and Gabriella, that are 7 and 8. So,
Yeah.
they keep me very focused on the goal at hand, and I learn from them every single day. So, for me, they are the why that I work so hard. And then second to that, I'm a lifelong retail leader, and I think in industries like retail. Many people don't start their career thinking I'm going to be a retail leader one day. You kind of fall into it, part-time job, holiday job. You enjoy maybe some of the dynamics of it. But I was really fortunate to have amazing leaders and mentors that saw something in me, that I was able to connect with people, show empathy, understanding, be open to new ideas, and then have fun while working. And they really helped me to shape that and scale that into my career over now 20, 30 years, all over the country with really large organizations. And now I find myself as a people leader of leaders with Apple Inc., a small fruit company that people know about. And I've enjoyed over almost 12 years now of tenure at that organization. And I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot in all of those years. Not just about the business and the numbers and the things that we do in an industry like retail, but I've learned a lot about people. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about the things that I know are very much kind of the framework and the pillars of leadership. And then I've learned a lot that growing yourself as a leader as just as important, if not more important, than helping your people to grow. Because it's really hard to help people inspire themselves for more if you're not doing it for yourself.
Well, as you're speaking, I'm just registering in my brain. You've got a lot of learnings that I'd love to hear about. Before getting through that list, really that you just listed now, how did the Hacking Your Leadership podcast came about?
Absolutely. So I in my background is kind of music. I love music. I was a vinyl DJ in nightclubs and radio for a long time and got into music production. And when I turned 40 years old, as a creative outlet, I wanted to get back into some type of outlet like podcasting or radio. And podcasting was kind of really, really jumping off. So I said, I'm going to start a podcast and spent a lot of time researching and then did my own podcast where I would talk about things like music and small business and talk to my friends about hobbies. And I was a couple of episodes in, and people started to ask me, say, "Why don't you talk about leadership? We've known you as a leader. You've been all over the country. You've led big businesses and teams. You should talk about that because we really appreciate your insights." And so I asked my friend Chris, who I've known for many, many years, and said, "Hey, would it be okay with you if I had people send you questions about leadership and then you just ask me? And like, I don't want to script it. I just want to just answer the questions. People are asking for it. Let's try it out." And we did that for 2 episodes, and they were the most popular episodes. People loved it. We did very little editing. And I said, I think we're onto something here. And in full transparency, my thought at the beginning was never to have a leadership podcast. It really was about talking about music with my friends, and it turned into something that people really appreciated. And so he and I sat down, we looked at the strategies, we said, how can we make this something that's relevant? How can we make it real and authentic? And how can we make sure that it's timely in regards to like the amount of time people have? So we figured, a break or a drive to work is about 20 minutes. Let's make sure our episodes don't really go beyond 20 minutes, except for maybe some long form interviews. And that's how we started the show. And we kind of came up with the name. We did a bunch of research on our own, and we were, an independent leadership podcast, and we still are today, 6 years later. I share with people our first day of downloads was 12, and we were so excited that 12 people wanted to hear us talk about leadership. And then, fast forward many, many years down the road, and we're down, we've millions of downloads and really big audiences. And we've just stayed true to that idea of let's just talk about things that are going on in leadership. And I think that the reviews and the response has been really, really good. So we've enjoyed it. But that's kind of the story arc of the Hacking Your Leadership podcast.
I love that. That's really a great story to hear how it started. And talking about leadership, you have learned so much about yourself, learned so much about really what's important to leaders and how important it is for them to continue to grow, and really the leadership framework that you mentioned about. Tell us more of some of those learnings. What would be let's say for those leaders who are listening, but also the future up and coming ones.
Mhm.
If there was like a blueprint of leadership, what would that look like? I mean, when you say, well, hacking your leadership, sometimes I say, really hacking? Could you really hack leadership? Are you either a leader or hacking? For me, like, was always very interesting and intriguing, the title. So, yeah, because some people may pretend they do it, but do they really do it? Is the other thing. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Of hacking leadership?
Yeah, well, I think a couple things. We had that question a lot. We Chris and I actually debated that a little bit, and I think that our intent was to say, how can we give some quick skills or tips that would help people? Like, if I implement this today, can I be better tomorrow? And that's where we kind of came up with the idea of the 1 minute hack, which is, by the way, it's never 1 minute. It's always like 2 or 3 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes. But it's conversation about saying, go do this right now. And we're really a big proponent of pen and paper. We know from a memory standpoint, it's very helpful. But that moment and that time that it takes for self reflection is really what we're talking about. Take a moment to pause, think about a couple of questions, write them down, and then consider how are you showing up in this space, or what could you do differently. And that was our intention, to say, like, today, make a change so that tomorrow you can be better. And that's what our hope has always been in that space. But that's why we felt like the hacking element was like, it kind of felt good, and it was one of those terms that was in style back then, and it worked well for us. But I think, to answer your larger question, lessons. I mean, I've had so many lessons about my own personal leadership and perspectives. Things where I was overly empathetic. Things where times when I was leading teams and I thought that minimal increases in productivity was enough to be great, and it was still below an expectation. And I had to challenge myself to say, how do I make sure that I can be empathetic to my team, and I can celebrate their success, while also making sure that we are at least achieving the expectations that we have within the business or the roles that we have. So those were like some monumental moments for me. I think overall, if I'm thinking about the framework and boiling it down to what are we really talking about at leadership, um, for me, it really comes down to helping people connect with self accountability in the whole thing. If you
Mhm.
can connect with somebody, if you can show them empathy, if you can give them direction, if you can give them patience, if you can give them an element of accountability that allows them to tap into their own, that to me is really when the magic happens. Somebody says, I want to be better for myself. Because once you're in that mindset, it makes it much easier to not take things personal when you get things like feedback, or when you try something new for the first time and it doesn't go your way, or you have a small failure, to move through those hurdles. being able to have self accountability and understand that you're going to have some of these failures as you move forward. That's a part of learning. It allows people to be in a mindset where they can truly be in a space to become better leaders. And so, there's a lot of things. My own platform is vision, clarity, and support. I think those are three major factors that if you have a disconnect with a team or a part of your business, it usually lands in one of those three things. But I think all in all, when we're talking about leadership, that's really the magic thing is, can we get somebody to say, I'm intrinsically motivated to be better for myself? And once they're in that space, we can feed them as much as we can. And they're much more apt to take not only what we teach them, but apply that to what they do every day.
That's a very insightful. How do you make that switch really? Because often people may not realize it. They may not be in that state. I guess, how do you lead or inspire people to get to that state?
I think you have to build trust. And I know that's like it's a word that everybody says, but what does it really mean? I think to for you and I to build trust with one another, we have to both be authentic, right? I have to be who I am, you have to be who you are, and we have to be comfortable in that space to say there are things that we may align on that are very familiar to both of us, and there may be things that are very different, and not just who we are, but how we see the world. And so as a leader, when you're talking to your team, and then you start talking about things like empathy and openness and inclusiveness and all these types of elements, it's about being in the moment with that person and saying like, I see you and I hear you, and there are going to be moments where maybe we don't see the same, and that's totally fine and okay, because my role as a leader is to make sure that you feel comfortable being who you are in the space that we've created, so that we can have trust with one another, so that you can truly believe that at the end of the day, I'm doing my best to help you to achieve and exceed your own goals, whether they're personal or professional. And I think that is like leaders who care. Like that's the truest element of caring for someone, is saying, I'm here with you. I want you to succeed. I want to be, your partner in making sure you're clear about the job that you have and the work that you have to do. I want to celebrate the things that you've done extremely well. I also want us to spend some time in some of the maybe mistakes that you've made, because we know there's so much gold in the learnings there. Right. I will never, I say to my team all the time, I'll only hold you accountable to the things that you commit to. Right. I can be clear about the expectation, but how you commit to get there are the things that I'm most interested in, because I can help you with those commitments to make them more realistic, more timely, whatever that might be. But I think that you have to build that trust in with the individual and with that team. And if you're never being yourself, if they don't get a chance to see who you are, and your true self, it's really hard to say, now believe me and give me your trust, right? We have to be much more open in today's world around building that trust to be able to help people, get to that space of really being motivated to better themselves.
Hear you, and I'm really intrigued by really the system, and I've came across this many times. Trust is really so important, and I've spoke to a great leader leading a large business, and he came to that framework that was trust, integrity, and approachability or humility in this case. Um, the problem I found that trust is not given;
Mhm.
it needs to be earned. So I kind of reversed it, and I said, well, if you have humility, first of all, you'll be open to learn, and you'll be open to um, so the authenticity, I relate a lot, but one of the things about that is that you may not like who you are today, but you're intriguingly interested in improving and celebrating who you could become, your potential. And I have one probably weakness that may or also strength, I guess, in time is that I don't see people for who they are. I see them for who they could become,
Mhm.
and I always look at the good in people and build on that. And of course, being aware that I always believe that behind a body or a human being, there is always two different mindsets. You can call them. You can call them spiritually two different spirits, the good or bad. So it's like, okay, which mindset are you on in today? What's controlling you? What's today? And if it's like that, that really grace, that humility, that really it really opens a lot of doors, because then people can be themselves. I think one of the biggest issues I've found in leadership is the first reaction to a problem. If a leader shouts out when there's a problem, that may kill a lot of goodness in the organization, meaning that people will probably not show up for who they are. They'll pretend, they'll mask, because they're saying, why should I go through that uncomfortable position shouting at me when I'm real, when I feel a problem comes. So I think that's one. And the talking about trust, then the second thing is, so humility is important, but also working on your own improvement. It comes with that. So if you have humility, you'll be able to take on the feedback and will be able to improve. Then the second thing is integrity, being able to do what you say. And if you're able to do what you say, people will start to trust you more, because you deliver on your word, and then that leads to trust. So I don't know, what are your thoughts, is on this, and just really debating here about
Yeah.
the I completely align with you on the trust, but it's just the steps to get to that trust is what's really interesting.
Yeah, I think the trust thing is really interesting because I've also had dialogue around, is trust given or is trust earned? And I think that as leaders, if we give trust, then more than likely our team will also give it back to us. And so what I mean by that is sometimes leaders feel that they like they have to, the team has to earn their trust. The leaders will say, "Show me what you can do, and then I will decide if that is something that I can trust," versus saying, "I fully trust you and I believe that you want to do great work, and I'm going to operate in a model that you want to do amazing work." And there's a book by Xander, called The Art of Possibility. I think it's Ben Xander. And I love that concept of him saying to his class, and he teaches in an orchestral class and says, "Today, all of you have an A. Congratulations, you're all A students. And what I want you to do," and I'm kind of summarizing here, is like write a note about at the end of the semester, what did you accomplish to keep your A? What did you do that you would say, I've kept my A? And what he learned in this is that people will set goals much higher than he ever expected, because that self accountability. He triggered that self accountability by saying, "I trust all of you. I see all of you as A students. You've earned that already. Now, what is it that you would want to do to achieve that?" And that idea, that ability to say, "I fully trust you," then the students say, "Well, then I trust you. I trust you as the leader here, that you're going to help me achieve that, and I'm probably going to set my bar a little bit higher." So when it comes to the trust game, I think that has to be something that as a leader you have to lead with. And I know that
Mhm.
can be difficult if you step into teams or organizations where maybe they haven't earned trust in the fact that the outcomes are not where they should be. That's tough when you walk into a
Yeah, yeah,
team and say, "We're not achieving," and now I have to trust them. The answer is yes. You have to trust the fact that they want to achieve, and you have to give that to them, because up to this point you don't really know whether or not the leadership previous was allowing them the space to truly be A students. The leadership previous may have said, "My assumption is that you're all C students, so I'm going to treat you as such. I'm going to micromanage you. I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm never going to give you the space to truly set your own standards here." And so I think that's kind of where I'm at with the trust thing. Is I think that it's one of those situations where if a leader has intent to give the trust, there's a much higher likelihood that the team will reciprocate that and give that to the leader. And then I love the second thing you spoke about, because I believe that one of the things you have to do to break through, to get people into the happy space, is to get them to look in the mirror, and do they see the actual reflection of who they are, or, to your point, the aspirational version of who they are?
Mhm.
Most of us are programmed to see the aspirational version. This is who I believe myself to be, versus this is who I actually am, right? And there's things that I've done with leaders and people to help them see that. One of them being, take a moment and tell me who you are as a leader. What are the three things that you feel have brought you to be the success that you've had today? Write them down. What are they? Let me clarify them. The whole thing. Okay. Now I want you to go ask 10 people at work, in family, in life, friends, and just walk up to them and say, "Hey, I need your help with this. I'm looking to develop myself. What are the three things that come to top of mind for you that you think that I do to add value to your life? What are those three things?" And then do their three things over a theme match the same three things that you see in yourself when you think about yourself? And how do we close that gap? Because the ability to understand that we want to be the aspirational versions of ourselves, but that takes a lot of work, because that means we have to show up that way every day with every relationship. It's a heavy task to take on. It requires a lot of self awareness. It requires a lot of self confidence, but it requires a lot of clarity. And again, being comfortable in who you are and knowing what are the superpowers that you have, what are the things that you do naturally. And then as you become more of a leader, you start to dive into like, well, then why do I do those things? How did my life shape who I am today? And am I perfectly okay being that person? Of course, I can learn new things, but I think that's such an important thing that you brought up, because I don't think we talk about it enough, and we tend to like jump beyond it, and we don't say, no, time out. Let's pause here, right? If we're gonna first step of self accountability is we have to be accurate on our assessment. We have to truly be honest with ourselves about who we are and what we do, and not believe our own hype sometimes, which can be something that we use as a defensive mechanism when we're trying to build confidence in new places.
I love that. It's I'm also deeply inspired by the future leaders in the building wealth for future generations through. And I'm a founder of Leader Academy more than 20 years ago through all my own journey as a young person that looking to discover what is the purpose, why am I here, and that inspired me to help a lot of young people. And to today's Day Leader Academy, of more than 3,000 young people who have gone
Mm,
through it. And we do one great exercise which we call the social mirror. And the
mm,
social mirror is exactly what you just described. What we Because a lot of young people don't know who they are.
mhm,
There's a lot of pressure onto them, and we understand them. We know there's pressure from Facebook, pressure from friends, pressure from peer groups, from family, from everyone that want to be successful, and pressure from themselves. But and the question is, we have so much choice in the Western world, at least, that we live in the best times ever. So, but we also the record high times of depression and anxiety. So the question, why is that? Is the question, and I think there's many reasons. One of them is actually having that decision fatigue and what to do. It's like so much choice, you don't know what to do. So and it comes down to, do you really know who you are? And often they don't, and that's why it's so valuable to go through that process of really discovering who you are. And that's these are the kind of things that really want to help them to find who they are, what sets their heart on fire, how does people see who they are. Because they, what they think of who they are and what people see could be two very different things. And
mhm,
that's really very good what you just give an example, because that helps us to understand we may be that way, but people perceives us differently. So we need to understand what's the reason and how we can close the gap, or we need to just upgrade and grow. And now, which brings me to our next question of you said how important it is for leaders to grow, and yeah, well, but maybe starting with a question of what are the biggest mistakes that leaders make
mhm.
in today's world?
I think subscribing to maybe leadership theories or behaviors that they've themselves experienced. And so kind of what I mean by that is that um there's many times leaders are built and kind of find their way as a result of the mentors and leaders they have. And so they think that this is the path, this is the way that worked for my leader, this is the way that has worked for me, therefore this is the way it's going to work for those that I lead. And I think that that can be really tough because leadership is evolving constantly. People are expecting more of leaders. We're now in a space, and I love that you brought that up about kind of self identity and what does that mean. Where now we're talking about these things with people and at work, and this is something that's new in the last decade or so that would have been leave that at home before. You know what I mean? Like that was what, just come to work hard, put your head down, do these things. And now we have this overwhelming sense of responsibility to help people clear away the noise. Because from a societal standpoint, there is the too many choices to choose from. There's this feeling of I want to find kind of my tribe. I want to find where I fit in, and it's exhausting to spend time trying to be somebody that you're not, to get the acceptance of those that are around you. Like these are all real things that leaders today really have to understand if you're truly looking to care about your people and help lead them down this path. And I think that that's some of the mistakes, is that we get into the kind of the repetitive nature of how we've been led, instead of saying, these are the things that have worked for me. Why did those things work for me as the person that I am?
Mm.
Why did I find that style of leadership helpful in building who I am? And how do I take from these different things to then help lead the people that I now lead? And they don't. I think some leaders don't spend enough time broadening their scope, looking at different things, looking at different leadership styles, utilizing the benefit of the internet by consuming leadership content in all different forms and factors, to then question, okay, like, how does that resonate with me? But more importantly, what can I take from this for that person who may need that in my next conversation? Versus kind of making these molds of, this is the way that we lead people. I think we're in a space now where we've broken out of the molds. Nobody wants to be in a mold anymore. And you have to say, how can I stand firm on my tenets of leadership? We talk about things like trust and integrity, and and honesty and empathy and inclusion. Like, these are kind of tenets of who we want to be. But within that, how am I agile in moving to the person in front of me to make sure that they feel welcome, that they feel seen and heard, but that I know as a leader, that's my responsibility, is to help to bring them along in a way that they get to be their authentic selves. And so I think that's where I see a lot of leaders that I work with and that I help kind of mentor and coach through, is that they've been taught one way and they have not broadened yet their scope on what else is out there. Because in the moment of them learning, it's about them. In the moment of them serving other people, it's about the people. And so you have to make that transition to say, I need to learn more to be able to help those that maybe this one style is not going to be the solution for.
Thank you for sharing that and bring this up. And now, since I personally, and what we do here in the more of the business that I found, Dynamics, which is we're deeply passionate about helping leaders fulfill their vision by attracting exceptionally gifted talent. And there's a significant power, I think, of that, because exceptionally gifted talent, I don't know who cares, can make such a difference to your organization. Could be a multi-billion growth, could be exceptional innovation, or just really for you could be one hire away from that. And I'm really passionate about this topic, and I would like to take your view of what do you think exceptionally gifted talent is looking for from a leader
Mhm.
um, today, and is that has that evolved? Is that changing in the current
Yeah,
time?
I think probably the two things this day and age that exceptionally gifted talent is looking for is, number one, recognition of what that talent is. I think sometimes we don't spend enough time helping people not only like build upon what they know is their special gift, but then putting them in the spaces to actually
Mhm.
utilize that gift. Many organizations work under this assumption that if you're really gifted in this space, that's going to apply to all the spaces that you have. That's just not the case. I'm very gifted in certain elements of creativity and things that I work on, and that all doesn't apply to other spaces that I'm in, and I'm aware of that and I know that. But if you say, oh, Lorenzo is really good at ideation when it comes to creativity, let's have him go do that with this innovative project around software engineering. And I'm like, I don't, that's not my wheelhouse. Just because I'm really good at being creative and ideating in this space when it comes to maybe leadership theory or connecting the dots of what teams need or what content might be most relevant for the objective at hand, that doesn't apply to this other space over here. But sometimes we think that it does because, the person is so talented in this thing here. So I think exceptionally gifted, talented people are looking for, number one, am I being seen for what I bring? And number two, am I given the space to be able to apply that talent in a way that's giving, the most for the organization? Because that's an obligation when I decide to work here, but also it's allowing me the space to go there. I've got friends that are in things like marketing and advertising, and they are some of the most, I think, beautiful minds and how they understand the emotional aspects of design and lettering and fonts, and it blows my mind. I'm like, I don't even know how you do that. And then they will go sometimes to an organization to do marketing, and they get boxed in. And they get boxed into like, yeah, I don't know if we want to do that. I don't know if we want to take that kind of risk. That's different than what we have as a brand. And it's like, well, then why did you bring them on? Why why did you bring on this amazing talent and then not allow them the space to go out there and really apply that talent? So I think that that's becoming a requirement very quickly, of those that have, that type of talent and want to have that type of an impact to a business and to an organization. I love that you said, like, you're one hire away from exceptionally moving your business forward. But if you limit that hire, if you build a box around what you allow them to do, you're limiting your business's capability as well as growing. And so you have to have both. You have to bring them in, but you also have to be really conscious in how and where you have them apply that practice to be able to watch them, have the impact you want them to have.
I love that you brought this topic. We're one of the things we do in Anamis is really because our mission is to help people thrive at work, not
Mhm,
survive. And together with Theo Smith, who is actually the co-author and a world leader in the neurodiversity at work, he talks exactly about the things you've just shared.
mhm,
Because when you're neurodiverse, you may have hyperactivity or ADHD or dyslexia, but you could be so highly gifted in one area but undergifted in another.
mhm,
And I think well, if you look at just statistics, that 50% of entrepreneurs, including well, some of the most successful people on earth, like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, believe are actually neurodiverse. So they really have accomplished some exceptional things. But when you talk about organizations and people that are entering, often we filter those people out
mhm,
because we may not recognize their talents for they may be exceptional coders, but we just the application process and the way we interview it's just that they may have dyslexia and they may not be able to read. So if you only give them a way to apply through reading and answer quick questions through reading, they're probably clearly going to fail. So I think really that awareness is so important since more than 20% of world population is neurodiverse,
mhm,
and we need that diversity because of the like the bees. It's so a really great input that you said. You got to bring that. You got to ask the question: are you ready for such a talent?
mhm.
It's like,
Right.
do you
Yeah.
are you prepared to onboard someone who is
Mhm,
exceptionally gifted to operate in the way that they can versus just operating in a very small box that
mhm.
you want creativity, you want an explosion in a very small box. It's like it's clearly a very limiting, and people find demotivated. And I really appreciate your perspective on this one. Which brings to the next question: is can anyone aspire to be a leader? Do you think? From
Mhm.
your experience.
I think so. I think, that we've had episodes around, like, is our leaders born, right? Or is it a
Yeah,
skill and that
exactly.
type of thing? Natural born leaders and that type of terminology. And my belief is that leadership is a skill, but that those in life experience can be an accelerator. And I always use the example of, like, I'm the oldest sibling. I have a little sister who's 2 years younger than I am. And as a kid, there were many times where I was now responsible for my sister, right? And did I want to be? No, but that was just the way things were, right? And so there was an element of accountability and responsibility that were on my shoulders as the older sibling. That from an early age, I kind of had this level of leadership that, again, I didn't ask for, but was given to me, and because of that, it helped to shape certain things that in life helped me from a leadership standpoint. So again, I think that it's more about circumstances, and things that happen to people where you kind of get either an accelerator or a head start into leadership. But there are definitely ingredients to leadership that are going to be critical to being successful. So it's hard to it's hard to be a leader of people that's inspiring, if you're not comfortable having a personality type that allows you to tell stories and to connect with people. It's hard to be a leader of substance if you're not good at having some elements of empathy. Like, these are things that I think are critical recipe pieces of leadership that you kind of have to have, and then those can be refined and sharpened. But I also believe the same thing as like empathy is like, I think empathy, if I was to take a college course and get a master's degree in empathy and all I did was read books, I can understand it. But until I have to feel it, that's going to really shape my empathy, and how I see people and how I see the work. So there are things that experience, is really the teacher here, and that helps to really shape leadership. And that's kind of where I'm at with this. I think that, it absolutely is a skill set, but life is a big teacher when it comes to
Mm,
the effectiveness of leadership long term.
I love that. You listed a few of the ingredients of leadership. What would you say are really the must-haves?
Um,
A
I, I,
successful and a great leader.
I think curiosity,
Yeah.
I think is one of them. I think courage is absolutely another one. And I think decisiveness. Those are three, outside of the, trust, integrity, empathy, some of the other elements of how we would say who's a good person. But I think that great leaders, you have to be curious. And that curiosity
Yeah.
leads to understanding people better, asking better
Yeah.
questions. Having having a curious mind allows you to kind of go past quickly. Like, you mentioned earlier, kind of like the initial reaction is not, I'm not angry about what happened. I'm curious. What happened? How did we get here? Right? That's a different reaction than being upset about a mistake.
Mm,
The ability to really have courage is such a critical element, because many times as leaders, a part of that role is defending your people and creating space for them to have the opportunity to make a mistake. And so you have to be the one who speaks up on behalf of your team. You have to be the one who
yes.
has the courage to say, like, that's not something that I think is the right thing. And that's what a lot of people expect of their leaders. And I think that's where you get a lot of disappointment when leaders don't have courage and they don't, push back or fight for their team in the right types of ways. And then I think decisiveness. You have to be willing to make decisions. There's
Yeah.
nothing more frustrating than somebody going to a leader to say, "Hey, I need help with this," and then somebody kind of like not wanting to make the decision or not helping them kind of push down the path, though. So I think those are things that are really big components for me, and I think that they're also kind of on a spectrum, because you can be slightly courageous, and you can be courageous with the right audience and then not courageous when it comes to other audiences. That can be something that can be a rub with leaders. You could be curious at certain times, like there's these things that people can be, but I think it creates frustration if you're not constantly moving those things forward and those becoming really big pillars, as a leader over time.
Thank you. That's been really a great conversation. Final, some of the final questions that I wanted to address with you. First of all, how do you take care of yourself?
Mm. I think, there's, it's kind of like, it's the same. I don't want to be like, people just say words for the sake of saying words. But I think that, like, mentally, spiritually, physically, these are all things that you have to do as a person. And as a leader, it's even more important that way. I think from a mental standpoint, taking that time, to self-reflect, taking the time to give yourself some grace, taking the time to know that, things will be difficult from time to time, where people will make decisions and mistakes that you don't know where they're coming from, and you can't take them as personal. You have to really, kind of make sure that you are curious in those spaces and help people. But I think that that's an important part of leadership. Sometimes leaders, we can get so heavily focused on an outcome or outcomes collectively and really feel that that's the value of our leadership. And we know that leadership and outcomes can be a little bit of a roller coaster. And the idea is that you're constantly getting better, but you're closing the deltas of how much of those dips are happening in the roller coaster. But I think for me, that mental element of it is really important. I think, physically, health wise, you got to find a way to get energy out. You got to go to the gym. You have to find ways to make sure that you are exhausting your body as well as your mind, so that you can get good rest and so that you can feel good about the work that you're doing while you're there, and do your best to limit any type of physical ailments that would cause a distraction or create spaces where, You can't be all in, or you can't be clear headed in the work that you're doing. And then I think spiritually, that means a lot of things for a lot of different people. But I think having a grander why as to the work that you do. How do you attach that work to a bigger message? Is that something that you feel that is the reason that you exist? Is that something that you feel as a personal mantra for what you want to impact and that you want to have? Is that something that you feel is because you want the legacy of people to know the type of person that you are, and you want to treat people as well as you possibly can while you're here? Whatever that might be for you, I think that you have to be clear in what that why is, and what is the guiding force for you, because that's going to guide you through the hurdles and the things that are going to happen on every journey that you have. And having that is a great kind of guiding light to get you to where you want to go. And it gives you the hope that's needed in times when things become really difficult. We need hope. And when you have a clear kind of spiritual why, it allows you to get there in those tougher times.
I'm really intrigued about your personal spiritual why. Like what are your really personal beliefs, philosophies on the spiritual part?
Yeah, I've had a really unique experience in my life of being baptized Catholic, growing up in a Presbyterian church.
Yeah.
At one point, my parents were, kind of like youth pastor advisors. And so I spent a lot of time in kind of structured religious places. And what I would share with you is I think that no matter what you believe or what you think, I think we are all here for a reason. And I think that when we are connected to that, and that we have a very strong belief and understanding that there is an impact that we are here to have, it pushes us forward in a way that allows us, again, to clear up noise, to be very focused on where we're going, and to know that we should live life in a place of service. And that when we are dedicated to not just helping others in what we do in our professional life, but truly helping people that we come across every day, I think you become much more fulfilled, and you set yourself up for an opportunity to really inspire and influence other people to also show up that way for other people. And so that's my kind of big picture of how I see it. I feel obligated to work in a life of service. I feel that leadership is something that I kind of fell into to a degree, maybe life service. So many things in my life that were difficult moments provided me with tools and skills unexpectedly that have helped me to inspire people to exceed their own expectations. And that's what fills my cup. That's what brings me joy every day that I come to work, and every day that I spend time talking to other people that love leadership and are looking to make the world a better place. And so that's kind of my spiritual and my kind of personal guidance.
Well, amazing. Well, thank God really for your service, and really blessings to you and your team and everything you do. Um, and just imagine for a moment yourself that we're in a position to make a profound difference to the world. And I believe we all have that capacity in some shape or form in our own space. But if it was really your decision, and you talk about decisiveness, that you had unlimited resources and unlimited possibilities, what would be one thing perhaps that you'd like to change in the world for a more caring, more better world?
I think I had a chance to go to Guatemala on a sabbatical and learn about the concept of sweat equity. And that was a big moment for me, because I think the world could use a better sense of kind of community in regards to, like, how could we spend some time every day just helping each other? How could we spend time every day saying, my neighbor, my friend, my family needs something, and I'm dedicating hours of my day to go help someone with whatever it is that they're working on, whether it's education, building a house, mowing their lawn, helping them through depression. It doesn't matter to me. But I think that, to me, I think is what the world needs, is truly dedicated, proactive time to say, this is my 2 hours of service for somebody else. And I think that would help collectively people have significantly more empathy, much less divisiveness, and a much better understanding of how all of us need it all the time. And when we help others, I think it also helps us to realize that we also need help. And I think that would make the world a better place.
That's amazing. Well, Lorenzo, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you today. Thank you so much for all the insights you've shared with us today, and for what a wonderful wish. I actually truly believe in that. That's one of the most inspirational answers that we've ever had. So thank you for that. And once again, blessings to you and your team, and thank you for being and be a leader who cares.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Congratulations and thank you for the service that you've done and having thousands of people that you're inspiring, both, in person, but also through the podcast and through content, is at the heart of what we are all trying to accomplish. Is let's just put forth an effort to help others. And I appreciate you and thank you so much. And I will do my absolute best to make sure that all of our listeners are well aware of the content that you're putting out as well, because I think that's super important that we pay it forward and that we give our people as many things that they could possibly utilize to help themselves become better leaders.
It's an honor. Thank you so much, Lorenzo.
Thank you.